here ever dreamt of winning the lottery? Oh, I have. Oh, yeah. I've actually been telling my daughter recently that one day I will win the lottery. Seriously. And when I do, I'm going to buy back our family beach house that we just recently sold in San Diego a few years ago. I miss it so much. And when I get that beach house back, I'm going to be so happy. And I'll live happily ever after, right? Yeah. Well, studies have shown that people who've actually won the lottery aren't any happier than they were before winning that big jackpot, right? Yeah. Well, imagine that. The good old saying goes, money doesn't buy you happiness, right? Right? You see, happiness is it's a good feeling, but it doesn't last. It's only temporary. What if I told you that I've actually have the winning ticket right here, to the biggest jackpot ever won in history, and I'm willing to share it with all of you today. Would you want it? Yeah. But this jackpot, it's not money. No, it's not money. It is way better. This jackpot is something that will sustain you. It will last long term. And it's something that Jesus gives to us out of his love for us. But there is a catch. And the catch is you have to choose it. It'll take a commitment, and it will not always be easy. I'm excited to reveal to you this jackpot because it's so special. It's something that we cannot produce in ourselves, but it's something that it's possible because of what Jesus has done for us out of his love for us. The jackpot is a life full of abundance of joy. Who wants to live a joyful life? What is joy exactly? And what is the hope and the answer to being a joyful person? Everyone in this group right now is going through something. How did I choose joy in the midst after my grandfather used my body as a playground? How did I choose joy after my husband and my firstborn son, who was just 16 years old, died instantly in a car accident? How did Debbie, the other speaker, how did she choose joy after her husband and son were instantly killed in a plane crash? And how did Gina, the other speaker, how did she choose joy after her husband is on life support in a coma after he was hit on his motorcycle, and a month later, he died? We are all gathered here today by no coincidences whatsoever. We were carefully assembled here together by God's plan and his purpose. How amazing is that? He knew the minute you were born that you would be sitting right here in this conference of finding joy. And Gina, Debbie, and I are so privileged for the next 6 hours to be here together with you to answer all these important questions that we all struggle with of how to live an abundance of life of joy, full of joy. Let's watch this video.
There was a local freeway accident where a mom and her toddler in a car seat with her mother in the passenger seat. They were rear-ended by a large semi that crushed and killed the child, and the mom and her mother survived. I said out loud to the women that I was with, God wouldn't let that happen to me, because He knows that I couldn't handle it.
My husband and I married very young. We were childhood sweethearts, and he played professional baseball. We had our ups and downs, life was crazy. But in 2012, we had found our lane.
Do I have life insurance? Do I have life insurance? I remember keep saying that under my breath as my sister-in-law continued to share how her and her daughters would be taken care of if the unthinkable were to happen.
My 3 boys and their dad loved baseball and the outdoors. Bill was a pilot, and he thoroughly enjoyed flying the family from place to place. Colin was at Pepperdine University on a baseball scholarship. Sean had been drafted to the Washington Nationals, and my oldest son, Patrick, and his wife, Erin, had a 1-year-old little boy, and they were expecting their second child, a girl.
He was now a prominent Christian talk show host, had found his sweet spot. Our kids were getting married. Our son and daughter-in-law had our first grandson. Our daughter got married to a wonderful guy, and our daughter-in-law told us that she was going to have our second grandchild.
Jimbo and I had just celebrated our 19th wedding anniversary. Summer vacation had just begun. Nicholas was 16 at the time. Greg was 13, Chelsea was 11, and my little boy, Sammy James, was 6 years old. And they were so excited that Magic Mountain and the Pirates Dinner Adventure Show were the first 2 things that were checked off the family fun list to do for the summer.
Every day we see tragic news stories, and we wonder, how can we worship a God who allows such terrible things to happen? And I had to ask myself, are you going to trust God for who He says He is? Are you going to believe His promises? Are you going to live out this faith that you claim? Because if you are, this is where life meets faith.
And I realized these are not coincidences. God is really working here to help me to shape my future. And for the first time, I started to feel like I have a future and a purpose in all of this pain.
I describe life as a roller coaster ride. It's exhilarating, yet awful at the same time. There's so many ups and downs and twists and turns, and then suddenly your life is completely turned upside down, and you're just trying to catch your breath. And at that moment, do you trust God and cling to Him, knowing He is holding the tracks together of your continued roller coaster ride? It's simply a choice we're given. I chose to trust God, and I'm grateful I did.
Hi. I'm like crying watching the video. I'm like, oh my gosh, this takes me back. So I'm one of the Debbies, Debbie R. And we wanted to take the opportunity to not leave you stranded with that, and tell you what happened to each of us. So I'm going to start. I would say that my life in 2009, I called it a fairy tale. In fact, my husband Bill, he named himself my knight in shining armor, which was fine because he treated me like a princess. As you saw in the video, I'm going to kind of repeat myself a little bit, but my oldest son, Patrick, was married, had a 1-year-old boy, and they were expecting their second child, a girl, which was like the first girl in the Rooney family, so we were excited. And then my middle son, Sean, was playing baseball for the Washington Nationals. He had been drafted, and so he was on the road playing baseball. He was engaged to Jana, and they were going to be married in the fall. They wanted a barn wedding, so they were going to get married at our property in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. We couldn't wait for that. And then my youngest was playing baseball in college, and life was really good. My husband was a pilot, as you saw in the video, so we spent a lot of time flying and following the kids playing baseball all over the place. And in fact, Bill and Patrick together were running a construction company, and so they were in Steamboat Springs getting our place ready for the upcoming barn wedding that fall. This was January, and I was expecting them home on a Saturday, and my husband called and he said, Santa Ana winds are blowing hard at home. The airport we flew into was Chino in Southern California. And so because of the Santa Ana winds, we're gonna postpone it and come home the following day, which I was totally fine with. So Sunday morning, I'm expecting a phone call from them, either one of them, to tell me that they had landed and they were on their way home. But instead of the phone call, I got a knock on my door. My sister and her husband came to tell me. Well, I opened the door and I saw the look on their face, and I knew that something terrible had happened. And they had to break the news that the plane had crashed shortly after takeoff, and there were no survivors. So my fairy tale life shattered into a million little pieces that day. And I was devastated, lost. I felt like everything turned black, and life was hopeless. And, our whole family was in shock, and we were just trying as hard as we could to make it through the day. And there was a point where I decided, this took some time, that, I was going to step into the grief. I was going to do whatever it took, and that God would be with me every step of the way. So I put my trust in Him and put one foot in front of the other.
Hello, I'm Gina Pastore. I am not a Debbie. And something you need to know about me is I caused a scandal. I met my future husband when I was 11, and he was a much older man of 15. I'm from a loud Italian family. My dad was the baseball coach in our hometown, kind of like a Tommy Lasorda. And I kept hearing about this Frank Pastore guy, and one day he came over to the house. And I'm not hormonal yet or romantically inclined, but I was just like, wow. And so I had this strange feeling around him, and I was told it was a crush. So he thought I was a really cute little 11-year-old girl, but then a few years later, he gets drafted by the Cincinnati Reds, goes off to play baseball in Billings, Montana, single A, and comes home from the ball season. I'm turning 15. He goes right to my dad and asks if he can take me out on my first date. And so my dad was a little reluctant, but he knew him and he liked him. So he said, yeah, he thought it was cute, you know. So we go on this first date, and we like each other. And he's going to leave to the season, comes back the following year. I'm now turning 16, and he asks me out again. We go out, and to make a long story short, we just came out that we really cared for each other. So we start dating exclusively, and of course, in a loud Italian family, that caused disruptions. There was fighting. I was fighting with my mom. My mom was fighting with my dad. Why'd you ever let her go out with him? And he's too old. And so everybody in town is talking about the scandal. And so my husband and I, well, my future husband and I get together, and we do what any normal 16 and 20-year-old would do. We make a plan to elope. And no, I wasn't with child. Rumor had it, but I wasn't. So it's a long story. It's in my book and all that, but we end up eloping, and within 6 months, my husband, who had played double-A ball, so now I had turned 17, he's 21, and we go to spring training. The Reds, of course, are thinking we're probably going to release this guy. He's one of our, top prospects, but he caused a scandal. And he starts pitching like Cy Young. He's in the big league camp because he's protected on the 40-man roster. And lo and behold, out of spring training that year, we go to the big leagues with, Pete Rose and Johnny Bench, and maybe you don't even know who they are, but a long time ago they were very prominent. So anyways, we were not believers yet. But several years down the road, my husband goes through an injury and ends up giving his life over to the Lord. And I'm nominally Catholic, and I'm telling him, do not become a Jesus freak. But he did. Every time a microphone was in front of him, he talked about Jesus and all that, and the players are teasing him and all that, but he didn't care. After baseball, he ends up going back to school, gets 3 earned degrees, actually, and ends up becoming a radio talk show host on a Christian station in Los Angeles. So we had been through the lumps and bumps of life. Our marriage was in a great place. We always loved each other, but when we were younger, we were so young, we had those big fights, as Italians do. But we were in a place where we weren't even really fighting that much anymore. And as I said in the video, our kids were getting married, we were having grandchildren, so we were just in that sweet spot of life. And one day he left for the studio, and that night on his way home, he was hit. He was on his motorcycle, and a dear woman, a nurse who had just gotten off work, got kind of sideswiped, and she went over 2 lanes and hit Frank. So I was crushed. And I think you're probably about now saying, how in the world are these women going to tell us about joy? But you hold on, we are. Because God is good and has gotten us through it. So you just have one more sad story to hear, okay? Hold on.
Okay. Can you hold my water, please? Sure. Okay. 10 years ago, on June 28th, 2013. It was a beautiful, sunny day. My son, Greg, who was 13 at the time, was so excited. He was going to go to San Clemente Beach, and he was going to hang out with his friends. So he was getting the car loaded with the boogie boards and the towels, and I was in the kitchen making breakfast for my 2 little ones and Greg too. And I get this spontaneous phone call from my husband. And he's at work with my oldest son, who's 16. They work together. And he goes, and now, mind you, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning. And he goes, Debbie, or no, he actually called me Bubbles. That was my name, Bubbles. He never called me Debbie. I don't know why I said that. He goes, Bubbles. I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm coming home with Nick in an hour, and I'm going to pick up Greg, and we're going to go to Laughlin and have a guys' weekend. And I'm like, wait. What? My head's spinning, because that's just my husband. He's so spontaneous. He's like a kid in a candy store. He's just like, can't wait. I'm just going to do it. So I'm like, okay, wait, hold on. I'm taking Greg to the beach with his buddies. That's already planned. And, I'm just like, just wait for a little bit, come home, pack, and sleep, take a nap, because he always would fall asleep. He's just one of those guys that I'm like, oh, keep him awake. He said, okay. And, the original plan for him to go to Laughlin wasn't that Friday and have a guys' weekend. It was supposed to be on Sunday, and he was supposed to just go one night to go pick up our family boat that we had in Laughlin and bring it back. That was all it was supposed to be, but he turned it into this big guys' weekend. So I said, okay. So my boys were thrilled because they got to be with their dad. He was like a kid to them. He was like my 5th child. So 6 o'clock comes around, and my boys are just bouncing off the wall. They can't wait to get in the car and get away from mom. And so I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, let's just gather around and say a prayer first. And they just went, ah. And so did my husband. Oh, I just want to go. I'm like, so we gathered around in a big family circle, and my husband prayed. Now that was pretty unusual for him to pray. And I just remember going, wow, he said the prayer. And that was very special to me. So the boys, as soon as the prayer was done, they started running and jumping into the truck. And my husband starts to walk away too. And I'm like, hello? And he turns around. I go, you didn't even give me a kiss goodbye. What if this is the last time I see you? Never in a million years. So he goes like this. He goes, come here. Come give me a kiss. And I go, no. Just a joke. But I really did say no. So he goes and gets in the truck, and then I run over to where my oldest son, Nick, was sitting in the passenger seat in the front seat. And I put my arms on the windowsill. And Jimbo goes, are you sure you and Chelsea and little Sammy, my little boy was 6 at the time, are you sure you don't want to come with us? And I'm like, and I could see my boys going, no, it's just a guys' weekend. I'm like, no, honey, you go have fun, go enjoy. And then I went over to Jimbo, and I gave him a big kiss goodbye. And then they drove off in their white truck, and I sat there and watched the truck go all the way down the street until I couldn't see it anymore, and never, ever, ever in a million years think that I would not see my husband and son again. It was like that night I got the dreaded phone call. The EMT that airlifted my 13-year-old son to a trauma center in Vegas called me. He said, that there's been an accident, and the truck, he said, first of all, he said, Greg is okay. I'm with Greg. We're at the trauma center right now. But the truck rolled 4 times. And it was just a single car accident. No other person, no other vehicle was involved. And the EMT couldn't even tell me. He goes, and I'm like, and I just knew. I knew that they were gone. And now, I was in such shock that I couldn't even understand what he was saying to me, where my 13-year-old son, which hospital he was at in the trauma center in Vegas. It was some weird name, and my brain couldn't handle it. And I think that EMT needed to seek therapy afterwards, because I was so screaming, and I'm like, give me your cell phone number, because all I could think of is, I don't know where my son is, and I need to get to him as fast as I can, and I need to, so I was just freaking out. So I got his phone number, and after that, I went into shock, and then all my family and friends came, and I'm telling you, in the moment of my despair, screaming and just screaming there was no, I couldn't hold any emotion back. It was the hardest day of my entire life. But the Holy Spirit, God, was speaking to me, going, Debbie, you have lived 30-something years without your mom, because I lost my mom when I was 6. So I had lived I was now 44 years old, and my mom died when I was 6. And he was saying, you've lived all these years without your mom. You can live without your husband and your child. And I'm like, I know. And I have. It's been 10 years, and I'm living. And I actually have joy. I do. But you're going to find out soon how I chose joy. So stay tuned.
All right, so you're going to put that in there. Now, and we're going to talk about finding joy and choosing joy. And it really is a choice. And there are obstacles that happen every day to rob us of our joy. I don't have to beat a dead horse on that, because we all know that. About a year after my husband passed away, somebody came up to me. I'm still in deep grief a year later. Let me move this a little. And this person asked me, "Are you happy?" And my first thought is, what a stupid question. Don't tell my grandkids I said stupid. Gigi, you're not supposed to say that. But I just stood there, and I knew that she was well-meaning, and I kind of knew what she was trying to get at. I guess she was trying to find out how I was and how I was doing. But I remember saying to her, no, I'm not happy. I'm very sad, but I do have joy. And that was the first time after Frank passed away that I said that. And I did have joy because I was clinging to God. For the first time in my life, Frank, as you know, I got married young. My whole adult life, I was with this man that was bigger than life, and I felt so safe and protected by him and just was crazy about him. And I didn't think, when he passed away, I remember thinking, how am I going to go on with life without Frank in it? But I realized, looking back after a year, I'm doing it. I'm surviving. Now, there's a difference between just surviving and feeling joy. So often people don't understand what joy is because we think of it really in the same category as happiness. Happiness is due to happenings, circumstances, and those can change in a minute. Joy is a deep-rooted feeling of knowing that God has got you right where He wants you. No matter what you're going through, you're right where God wants you. Okay, I talked about the obstacles and things that try to steal and rob your joy. So now we're going to get into that a little bit. And my talk is called Cleaning Out Your Emotional Closet. And this is very important. We are living souls that have a body. So often people think that we're our body and we have a soul. No, it's the other way around. When you're created in your mother's womb, the moment that the Shazam happens, you have a soul. And that's, of course, an argument against abortion, as we all know. But as we grow in life, think about it, we do so little to nurture our soul. Now, you guys are all here at a retreat conference today, so I am inclined to think that you're people that like to do stuff for your soul. So that's awesome. But there's so many people walking around, and you know them and I know them, and they just live out of their head, and they're sort of like robots, and they're trying to be happy and go on all these trips and do all these things, but they don't have joy. And a lot of times they don't even have happiness. So we're going to talk about this obstacle and an important discipline to put in your life if you don't have it already. And the first thing, okay, so when you go to clean out your clothes closet, I don't know about you, but my husband always cleaned out our closets, first of all. So after he passed away, I had to do it. And you have decisions to make. Am I going to keep that dress? Oh, gosh, I really like it, but gosh, I haven't worn it in 2 years. Somebody else could probably be wearing it. So you have to deliberate. You have to restructure. Okay, these shoes I only wear certain times. I'm going to put them on the bottom shelf. And, you have decisions to make. Well, it's the same thing when you start to go and look at your soul and spend time evaluating and taking inventory. And the first part of this is you have to have peace and quiet. And we live in a noisy world. Now, you guys are up here in Gardnerville. I'm from California. It's noisy down there. But, there's just so much going on all the time, and we're busy and that kind of thing. So you have to set time aside to do this. And Jesus, of course, practiced this. He would go away to quiet places, and that's when he'd often get attacked by the enemy, too. But he modeled this for us. So as you begin this process, and you're doing it, here's some questions you can ask yourself. Am I bored? Are you finding that you're just kind of bored and you're going through the motions? Even as a Christian, Christians get bored too. Do you have meaning and purpose in your life? Are you engaged in life? Because so often we're not. We go through lulls sometimes. Ask yourself, what do I need to throw away? Just as you outgrow or tire of clothes and shoes, you may need to throw some things in your life away. Maybe it's a job. Maybe it's a ministry. So often as Christians, we don't realize that. Sometimes we're doing ministries just kind of like rote, like robots, and we're not really getting joy out of it. And maybe there's somebody else who'd be doing what we're doing, and they would be getting joy out of it. Maybe it's time for us to move forward and let that go. Maybe it's a friendship or relationship. The word toxic is really big now. They're toxic. She's toxic. Everybody's toxic. Well, you know what? We all are a little toxic because we have sin nature. But there are people sometimes in our life that really do drag us down. And maybe you don't need to throw them away, but maybe you need to put them on a different shelf. A few years ago, I had a friendship that was dragging me down, and this person really didn't initiate much with me, so I just thought, I need to let go and give it over to God. And well, in a few years, that person disappeared. What was my first clue? I don't know, but I was holding on, and there was really no relationship there. It wasn't a two-way street. Maybe you've been holding on to a grudge or harboring bitterness in your heart. Christians do that too. I've done it. Sometimes it's hard to let go and forgive. That's a process. And as we all know, we don't do it for them, we do it for ourselves. But that is something that takes work. Research has shown social media affects us negatively. We're only seeing the best of reels of other people's lives, and it creates comparison and discontentment. Now, I like, Facebook and that because I keep up with people that we played baseball with, people from the past, but it's a tool. And so many, especially the younger people in our generation, it's become their whole identity and their image, and it's so dangerous. And it does create comparison. You can't help it when you're seeing they're off doing this and that, and oh, how fun that looks. Is there something you need to accept? Maybe it's a reality regarding a child. Maybe your child is a brat, and you created it. I know a little about that. Maybe it's a diagnosis, and you just don't want to face it, either for you or a family member or a friend. Maybe it's a transition. I know when my husband and I went through a transition when our oldest went off to college. He was just going like an hour away from home to Biola University, and after we dropped him off and went out for dinner with him and his room was all set up, we got in the car and I just sobbed because I realized my life's not going to be the same. Part of my family was now in college. My husband reassured me the whole way home, we're going to be okay, honey. He's only an hour away. We're going to see him on the weekends. We got home. I went in the house. I came back out in the garage, and Frank was sobbing in the garage. Frankie had forgot his golf clubs, and Frank was holding a golf club crying, and I said, honey, it's going to be okay. But anyways, we had to go through that transition. Maybe you need to work through some things in your life, forgiveness, or there's issues where you might need a little more help. Maybe you need some counseling. So often we think of counseling for people that are drug addicts or have an eating disorder. But you know what? As Christians, it's okay for us to go. Maybe it's a pastor, a ministry leader that you just need to talk and unfold some things with. If you go to a therapist, a licensed therapist, make sure it's a good one because there's a lot of weird stuff going on, but there are really good therapists out there too. So I just want to leave you with a couple questions, and you all have your little booklet. And there's places during this break if you want to spend some time, writing some things down or thinking about some things. But ask yourself, what needs to be thrown away from my emotional closet? Is God showing you an area in your life that needs to change? So just give that some thought for the next few minutes. And there's refreshments out in the room, and we're going to have a little break time now. Thank you.